Saying her name is not just a game, it is an act. For decades, folklore investigators have documented a disturbing pattern. Wherever the name Bloody Mary is repeated in front of a mirror, reports of visual distortion, memory lapses, and real panic soon follow. This documentary investigates when the legend stopped being a joke and began leaving traces. The earliest records do not speak of monsters, but of hope. In the 19th century, young women performed silent rituals with mirrors and candles, seeking visions of their future husbands. Preserved diaries describe reflections that did not match the face of the observer. Some reported seeing another woman, always pale, always motionless, always watching. Over time, the accounts changed. What was once curiosity became fear. Local newspaper archives between 1870 and 1890 mention young people found in states of shock after nighttime rituals. No physical injuries, only the same testimony. Something appeared in the mirror when the name was spoken aloud more than once. The name Bloody Mary did not arise by chance. Historians point to a possible connection with Mary of England, marked by religious persecution and public executions. Although there is no direct proof, the symbolism of blood, collective guilt, and reflected violence echoes throughout the legend. According to scholars, the mirror functions as a psychological gateway. Interviews recorded in the 1950s reveal a curious pattern. People who never met describe the same figure, a distorted female face, sunken eyes, and a smile that did not match the movement of the lips. Psychologists dismissed mass hysteria after confirming that many had no prior knowledge of the legend's details. The ritual remained simple, almost banal: a mirror, a closed environment, low light, the repetition of the name. Behavioral specialists warn that this setting favors dissociation and suggestion. Still, this does not explain physical marks reported in some cases, nor the deep emotional collapse observed in fully conscious adults. In 1963, a university study was interrupted after 3 volunteers refused to continue the experiment. Audio recordings captured absolute silence, followed by rapid breathing and pleas to extinguish the candle. One participant claimed the reflection moved on its own. The project was archived without official explanation. From the 1970s onward, the legend migrated into schools and suburbs, disguised as a childhood dare. However, police records show incidents of fainting, anxiety attacks, and minor self-inflicted injuries following the rituals. Always the same central element, the mirror. Always the same name spoken in ritual sequence. Folklorists argue that Bloody Mary is not a single spirit, but a symbolic form sustained by repetition. Each invocation would strengthen her presence in the collective imagination. The problem is that some testimonies describe details never publicly disclosed, such as whispered phrases and movements occurring outside the visual field. This is not a story about ghosts, but about persistence. Bloody Mary has crossed centuries, cultures, and generations without losing strength. Wherever there is a mirror and someone willing to say her name, something happens. Whether psychological, historical, or something older, we do not yet know, but the records indicate that no one leaves unchanged. More recent research suggests the ritual does not work solely through belief. Neurologists explain that the brain, when facing a mirror in low light, begins to fail at self-recognition. The face fragments. The mind attempts to fill the gaps. It is within this interval that many claim to see something they do not recognize as human. Yet not all accounts fit this explanation. There are testimonies from people who interrupted the ritual before the final repetition and still experienced changes in the environment. Mirrors fogged without steam, candles extinguished on their own, and a sense of presence behind them even when completely alone. In psychiatric hospital archives from the 1980s, the same name appears repeatedly, cited by patients with no contact with one another. Bloody Mary is described as the woman in the reflection, or the one who does not blink. Doctors noted that the pattern emerged after experiences involving mirrors, always at night. One detail draws investigators' attention. Almost all witnesses state that the figure does not appear immediately. There is a delay, a heavy silence, a moment when nothing happens. It is precisely then that fear turns into expectation, and expectation into absolute terror. The reflection then ceases to obey. Folklore documents indicate that older versions of the ritual required specific numbers of repetitions, always odd, 3, 5, or 7 times. Different cultures attributed symbolic meanings to these numbers, linked to death and the threshold between worlds. The mirror would be only the medium, not the source. Some scholars argue that Bloody Mary is not summoned, but awakened, a collective construction fed by generations of repetition. Each new ritual would add strength to the image, not as a physical being, but as a psychic presence that manifests when certain conditions are reproduced with precision. Interviews with adults over 40 reveal something unsettling. Many performed the ritual in their youth and believed they had forgotten it. Decades later, upon hearing the name again, they experienced immediate chills and vivid memories they swore did not exist, as if the experience had merely been dormant. There are reports of people who never spoke the name aloud, only thought it. Even so, they felt changes in the reflection. Psychologists warn that the power of suggestion is strong, but admit that the human brain should not produce such consistent images without direct stimulus or conscious associated memory. Curiously, more recent records show the legend persists even in skeptical environments. People who do not believe in the supernatural report the same discomfort when standing before a dark mirror for extended periods. Something about the combination of silence, expectation, and repetition seems to activate a primitive fear. To this day, there is no consensus. Bloody Mary may be a distorted cultural inheritance, a collective psychological phenomenon, or something that still escapes scientific classification. What the data confirms is simple and disturbing. When the ritual is followed, something changes, not always visible, but always profound. In 1994, an independent researcher decided to map occurrences associated with the ritual. The result was a disturbing archive. More than 100 reports presented similar symptoms: a feeling of being watched, distortion of one's own face, and a persistent fear that lasted for days. None of the participants knew each other. The only common point was the mirror. One rarely discussed aspect is sound. Witnesses claim that seconds before the manifestation, the environment seems to die. No external noise, no traffic, no wind, only absolute silence, described as oppressive. For some investigators, this detail suggests not hallucination, but a deep, altered state of perception. There are also those who claim to hear their own voice delayed in the reflection. The mouth moves, but the sound comes afterward. Home recordings analyzed by technicians show brief audio failures at that exact moment, with no clear technical explanation. The files indicate no editing, only a brief and unsettling interruption. Folklore researchers have compared Bloody Mary to ancient mirror-related entities in European cultures. Always female figures, always associated with loss of identity. In these traditions, the reflection was not seen as an image, but as an imperfect duplication of the soul, a flaw that could allow something to pass through. In more extreme testimonies, some people report not seeing Bloody Mary, but feeling that she sees them, a gaze coming from the other side of the mirror, even without a defined image. This detail appears repeatedly in records separated by decades, suggesting a consistent subjective experience difficult to attribute solely to imagination. Documented cases show that abruptly interrupting the ritual can intensify the effects. People who extinguish the candle before the final repetition, reported recurring dreams of broken mirrors and blurred faces. Psychologists observed that the brain attempts to complete unfinished patterns, prolonging the sense of threat. There are also reports of involuntary repetition. Individuals who swear they never performed the ritual begin mentally repeating the name after hearing the story. This phenomenon, known as cognitive intrusion, reinforces the legend's persistence. Bloody Mary ceases to be an action and becomes an idea that is difficult to silence. In more recent interviews, some participants state that the reflection does not show a woman, but a corrupted version of themselves. Eyes they do not recognize, expressions they do not control. Specialists suggest that the legend functions as a brutal psychological mirror, exposing fears that usually remain hidden. What makes Bloody Mary resistant to time is not the image, but the method. Anyone can reproduce the ritual. It requires no formal belief, only repetition and isolation. This transforms the legend into an accessible, intimate, and potentially disturbing experience, unlike any other documented urban myth. After more than a century of reports, Bloody Mary remains without a definitive face, without a proven origin, and without a conclusive explanation. Even so, the pattern repeats. Whenever the name is spoken before a mirror, something happens. Perhaps not in the glass, perhaps within, and that may be the most frightening part of all. In the most sensitive research archives appear reports that were never published. People who claim to have seen the reflection smile even before the final repetition of the name. The smile was not human. It expressed no emotion, only confirmation, as if something knew it had been called and waited only for permission. A recurring detail in testimonies is the sensation of having made a mistake. Even without believing in the legend, many describe immediate regret after beginning the ritual. Not common fear, but the certainty of having crossed an invisible boundary. Investigators call this violation instinct, when the mind recognizes danger without understanding the cause. Some witnesses claim the mirror seems to deepen. As if it gains depth, the reflection ceases to feel like a surface and takes on the appearance of an internal space. Psychologists admit that this perception should not occur spontaneously, especially in individuals with no history of dissociative disorders. In rare cases, the ritual was performed in groups, with even more unsettling results. People report seeing different things at the same time, yet reacting in synchronized ways, as if something had been collectively perceived. This type of coordinated response challenges explanations based solely on individual suggestion. Records show that Bloody Mary rarely manifests fully. Most accounts describe fragments, eyes, shadows, movement. Investigators believe the legend functions as an incomplete trigger, activating something that never fully reveals itself, perhaps because it does not need to. The impact occurs before the image forms. A rarely discussed aspect is the aftermath. Many state that the immediate fear passes, but something remains. Avoidance of mirrors, a sense of being watched in the dark, difficulty being alone. These effects can last for years. Some interviewees only agreed to speak decades later, still visibly uneasy. There are also those who insist Bloody Mary does not appear to everyone. She would choose specific moments, specific people. This selectivity feeds the legend and makes it more dangerous. The lack of criteria keeps the expectation alive. Anyone could be next, or believe they could be. Researchers compared the phenomenon to other invocation rituals, but none present such a high rate of similar experiences. Bloody Mary requires no complex symbols or formal belief, only repetition, focus, and silence. This extreme simplicity may be precisely what makes the ritual so psychologically effective. In final interviews, some participants stated something even more disturbing, that Bloody Mary does not appear when the name is spoken, but when the person expects something to happen. The name would be only the key. The true trigger would be the willingness to stare at one's own reflection without looking away. At this point in the investigation, the question is no longer whether Bloody Mary exists. The question becomes what exactly responds when she is called. Not a myth about an external spirit, but about the moment the human mind faces the unknown and realizes that not every reflection belongs to the one who looks. In the final stages of the investigation, some researchers decided to repeat the ritual under controlled conditions. Monitored rooms, cameras, sensors, and external observers. In several tests, nothing happened. In others, participants abruptly stopped, claiming that something was wrong, unable to explain the feeling with words. One disturbing data point emerged from these experiments. Whenever someone reported a sense of presence, physiological records showed a sudden drop in peripheral temperature and a sharp increase in heart rate. The body reacted before the mind processed fear, as if instinct recognized an invisible threat. In recorded interviews, some participants claimed to hear their own names whispered from the mirror, without any lip movement in the reflection. Technicians analyzed the audio and found only static noise, no detectable voice. Still, the reports repeat with unsettling precision. A veteran investigator summarized the experience bluntly. Bloody Mary does not invade physical space. She invades perception. The ritual dismantles the boundary between observer and observed. The mirror stops reflecting and begins confronting. It does not show who you are, but who you fear to find. Over decades, attempts to discredit the legend failed, not because of a lack of explanation, but because of the emotional consistency of the reports. Different people, cultures, and generations describe the same deep discomfort, something that lingers even when conscious fear tries to rationalize it. Curiously, there are no reliable reports of Bloody Mary appearing outside the mirror. This reinforces the idea that she does not belong to external space. Her existence depends on reflection, on the threshold where identity and image blur, where the mind seeks control and encounters resistance. Some theorists suggest the legend functions as an involuntary test. Anyone who stares into the mirror expecting something supernatural has already crossed a psychological threshold. At that point, the mind stops protecting the individual from imagination, and imagination, when unleashed, can be merciless. The final silence of the ritual is described as the most frightening moment, not when something appears, but when nothing happens and the person realizes they expected it to happen. According to specialists, this void is where fear settles most deeply and lasts the longest. Bloody Mary survives because she does not require proof. She is sustained by experience. Those who experience it rarely repeat it. Those who do not doubt it. This cycle keeps the legend alive, constantly renewed, always ready to be tested again by someone who believes they are in control. At the end of this investigation, only one warning remains in the oldest records. The mirror returns more than images. It returns attention. And when a name is repeated in the dark, perhaps the most dangerous thing is not what appears, but what begins to watch back. In the oldest records, there is a warning that appears repeatedly. Do not say the name out of curiosity. Do not say it to prove courage. Repetition, according to these accounts, does not summon something external, but creates an internal opening where the observer ceases to only look and begins to be observed. Investigators agree on one final point. Bloody Mary does not need to manifest to win. Simply remaining in memory is enough. Many interviewees state that after the experience they could never again face a mirror in the dark without recalling the silent sense of presence. Over more than a century, no definitive proof has been found. No clear image, no conclusive recording. And yet, the pattern endures. Fear arises at the same moments. Silence weighs the same way, as if the legend learned exactly where to touch the human mind. Perhaps Bloody Mary was never a person, nor a spirit. Perhaps she is a collective reflection of the fear of facing one's own image when all distractions disappear. A reminder that in the dark, before a mirror, we do not always recognize who is looking back. This documentary does not claim that Bloody Mary exists. It only records that whenever her name is spoken under certain conditions, something changes. And that is enough for the legend to continue, because as long as there are mirrors, silence, and someone willing to repeat the name, the story will never truly end.